It didn't say recording in progress, but it's recording.
The outline from?
It says it's recording, but this did not say recording in progress.
Here, let me log into Zoom. Let me log in through.
Well, it has to be, oh no, it's my camera. It's just going through my camera. It's not the Zoom, it's not the owl.
You have to download some software for the owl? You do, huh?
Yes. Just forget it. We are going with this right now. I'm not dealing with any more right now. We're already 15 minutes late. So, all right, today is July 11th. We're having problems with for you who are online, because there's a couple people online. We've had problems with our Zoom computer. I had to run home, get my own laptop, bring it back, try to get the Zoom stuff installed. And now, our OWL broadcasting thing is not working, and because I have to download that to the computer, and I'm not gonna do it. So we'll just do it later, so you get me. They have me on their screen. Okay, so today is July 11th. It is 6:15 p.m. and we're finally getting started on the town council work meeting tonight. So the first order of business is everything on here tonight, because it's a work meeting, is just for discussion purposes only. So the first thing we have as an item of business is a proposed resolution, an ordinance. Two different ordinances proposing revision of chapter 60.04, which is the section specifically on residential hosting. So Misty, why don't you tell us about this?
Okay.
Because these were yours.
So I noticed, I was talking with Crystal and noticed that there's a spot in this residential posting that was added back in January of 2022 that has the permanent resident added.
In January of 2020.
2021.
Oh, okay.
2021, my
I was
bad.
gonna say, thank you.
Yes, thank you for correcting me on that. 2021 that says that, because they added permanent resident or permanent resident. And when we originally put this thing together, it was put together to help the locals make extra money at their house, not for a businessman or someone who doesn't live in Bergen. It was made specifically for our locals. And it's not made for a renter to do it. It was made for the owner of the home to be able to rent out a room. And so that was added. So I made two ordinances here, because after talking to a couple of people, but they've come up, there's been different points that have been brought up for and against. So my original ordinance, which is the one I really like, it takes out or permanent resident. So it makes the RHF only residential hosting for the owner. That doesn't mean because I know some of the argument was that if you have a trust, you can't do that because the trust owns it. But if you're a trustee and part of the trust, or you're listed in the trust, you still own it because you are the trust. So that eliminates that. There also was an argument which brought the second ordinance together, because if I own it as the trustee and I want my son or daughter to rent it out, this was the point that was brought to me. They can't rent it out because they're not the.
Okay.
So they couldn't live in it and rent it out because they're technically not the owner.
Okay.
So I brought in this, that was the second one, but I added to that one, I just corrected a few places that needed, I took the or and put and in a couple of places, like it says all applications for permits, and it lists all the requirements. It said and or.
Owner and permanent.
And it needs to be both of them, because you don't want a permanent resident, not that I'm saying everybody's horrible, I'm just saying it can happen on the extreme end, that they might rent it out without the owner knowing.
Correct.
So I added an item A in section 1 that says, a permanent resident must obtain notarized written permission from the owner as part of the applicant.
I saw that
Part.
somewhere online, but where?
It's twice in there. I've listed it twice in there. So it's on,
Number what?
in number 1, under all applicable current contract information, where if anything changes or. if anything
Yes,
everything else.
okay.
So there, right there, it's talking about the initial application. Then the second part that I added it is at the bottom on number 6 of
Mhm,
that section.
mhm.
That says, that I put alongside the update, and I don't know, the wording may be off. Alongside the updated application, the permanent resident must obtain updated or new notarized written permission from the owner.
Okay,
So that's if a different renter moves into that home, they have to bring in new documentation. That's if we decided to leave it
with
with
permanent
permanent
resident.
resident. But the initial one I wrote just completely removes permanent resident and makes it only the owner can do that. Because that was initially the purpose of that part. And my other argument was that, not argument, my other point was that it just makes it a short-term rental if we let people that are not the owners start renting it out.
Correct,
And we have a short-term rental ordinance, and we just, that's what that is for. So that's why I came up with these. I feel pretty strongly about it. I feel like it's not, we shouldn't take something and make it a short-term rental ordinance when it's not. It was written initially for a residence for a home for people who are living in that home.
Comments?
Yeah. Comments from everyone.
Paul, anything to say? I'll start with your end and work our way around.
Okay, just, I know the public can't see us off Zoom, so they don't know I'm wearing sunglasses at this meeting. But, two individuals in the audience, they see me in sunglasses, I'm not Joe Poole. I went to see Dr. May today, and, when we rescheduled the work session to tonight, I tried to call him up and get a reschedule of his appointment, but I wasn't gonna wait till I told him, so I'm gonna have my appointment and have drops in my eyes. And so I apologize because I haven't read your ordinance, but I agree with what you're saying. I actually would go further in the fact that if you take a look at, state law, it refers to owner, and it refers to more than 30 days. But I do understand the idea of providing bedrooms for individuals in at houses to help make extra money and with respect to short-term rent. So I like the ordinance that you're dealing with just all that one I agree with. I'm not in favor of permanent resident. I don't think it should be in there because it creates, like you said, short-term rentals. And short-term rentals is a business. It also affects the marketing of housing. It affects rental housing. It also affects the housing stock. So what I would do permanent resident. If you go with that, I think we need a definition of permanent resident that is better than what we currently have in the ordinance. Because of the drops, I wasn't able to bring one in today, but I know this is going to planning and zoning. So when we have a meeting next week, I'll have some suggested language that we can look at, and that can be sent down to planning and zoning for them to consider.
There's no definition, by the way, of permanent resident
In chapter 2, there's not.
in chapter 2, there is not. I'm looking at chapter 2 right now.
Then we should have a definition.
There was a definition for. There was something I looked at recently that had to do with short-term rentals that I looked. Oh, residential hosting. There is a definition for residential hosting and a definition for residential hosting facility. RHF guest quarter, RHF permit, but there is no definition for permanent resident. And so
if we leave it, we need to add it.
if we
need to add it.
leave permanent resident in, then we need a definition of a permanent resident. And I know from some of the people in town who say, oh, my son or my daughter is gonna live there, blah, blah, blah. The definition of permanent resident could be made to be something, if permanent resident stays in, it could be made something to be like first level of consanguinity within a family. Which means kids or parents, and that's it, no other relative. I looked up the first level of consanguinity today, and it's parents and children.
So we should add that anyway.
So if we do permanent resident, that's possible to be the definition of permanent resident.
Because I think the idea of permanent resident was so that they could let someone rent it.
Yeah.
And live in that house.
Yeah, which is making it a short term rental.
Yeah.
And I think some of the problems that are experienced is that they bring in somebody that say they're a permanent resident, they have their mail transferred to that house, and then they live someplace else, and it becomes a short-term rental for that one unit. And the definition I was thinking was to include a requirement of so many days within that they have to prove that they lived in the house. But with your suggestion, that makes sense even more than my definition. But I'll bring in mine, and then we can, let's let planning and zoning work it through and bring it back a recommendation to us.
Okay, so I think from what I've said, you guys probably have my opinion. I've always thought it should be owner. I never liked permanent resident being added in. I do understand the people who are looking for their children to be able to stay there, but that's it. Nothing else is okay with me
Right.
when it comes to a permanent resident. But that's me, but Leroy. We're going along with what you think about this proposed ordinances from Misty. With her two proposed ordinances, one that removes permanent resident and one that leaves it in but makes some regulations.
I'm just waiting to hear from planning and zoning before I make a decision on what they're going to do.
No,
Okay.
it is. I just want to know if you guys want to add anything to it before I send it to them, from what I've already done.
I like the first one.
Okay, and so
Which first one was that?
Well, the one that's first in your packet.
I mixed mine up.
yeah,
It's the
I,
one that talks about
Is it got the bold writing or is it got the white?
and or the permanent resident.
resident.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Jean.
But, you know, I kind of feel that this is really planning and zoning to look at it.
No, I just brought it to get your ideas because I made it. It's still going to, and it's on their agenda tomorrow.
Yeah, I know it's on their agenda tomorrow. That's why I'm saying I'm just waiting to hear what the recommendations are and why.
Okay, Jean.
I'm obviously opposed,
Okay.
but because I think we're creating ordinances for a problem that doesn't exist. We're making a problem, we're making a fix for something that's not a problem. I guess. Anyway, as far as my suggestions, let's see, I think I definitely, if we're gonna have to go with this, the cluster of two evils that I would suggest that the council look at would be the one that offers the owner and the resident. My suggestion changes that you want to put in where you sit down is to say, in all these places, it should say owner or an owner and permanent resident, because it's two separate deals. Very first one you have there, you put in order to obtain and maintain an RHM permit, an owner and permanent resident. If there's not a permanent resident, then it kind of defeats the purpose. You have to separate those two units. There's the owner and there's the owner or and permanent resident together. So if the owner is there, then it's one case. If it's the owner and permanent resident, it's another case. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because the goal was for me to, the goal I took those out was because I wanted the owner to have notarized written permission.
Sure. And you
So
can
it
still
can't
do that,
happen without them,
but you have to say owner or owner and permanent resident.
just in that one place. The rest has to be, no, the one down at the bottom, it has to be.
So if you say probably should be addressed with the owner or the owner and the permanent resident, have to say that on each one, so that segregates the two.
Okay.
I think permanent resident is a good thing to have in there. Remember, there's state stuff on that too. I think the state is 6 months. I think we have just kind of let permanent resident fall with the long-term renter, short-term renter in the past, like the 30 days has kind of been the thing for the town that we've used. I don't think it's written anywhere, but that's kind of been the general assumption is 30 days or longer and become a permanent resident.
You referred to the state, what are you talking about?
The state has laws on residency. We want to make sure we don't go against them. I think you could be more restrictive. If we wanted to say 30 days, we could, I don't think you could say, well, you have to live there for a year to be a permanent resident. When the state says 6 months or whatever. Does that make sense? I think we need to make sure we don't go in against whatever the state
Yeah, the permanent resident for the state, you're talking about whether they're in a
eligible.
considered Utah their home, that's different than, we can go restricted.
We can't go less.
Yeah,
We just should be making sure.
We can go.
We could go even less, because what I'm hearing Gene saying is that's a permanent resident to be a resident of the state. We're talking about a whole different, it's not apples to apples on this.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can make our own definition as to what we want permanent resident to be. I hate to say that, we can go up or down. And I prefer that we go longer than shorter, but we could go shorter if we needed to.
But
So just put the ors back in, that's your suggestion for
I'm just saying, you have to add or, but you have to then add owner and permanent resident. So each one would say owner or and.
owner and
So
president.
the operates two distinct.
I'll put it, it's written that way in the original one.
Will you be able to fix that for the planning commission?
Yeah, because it's written in the original one, I'll just go back and fix that, put that and or.
I still think it would be wise to at least look at county and state law, because a person can live right now, can live in New York, they have real property here, they can vote here and stay here 1 day a year. As we just witnessed from our latest
Right.
congressperson, so I think if we're gonna hold the standard, it ought to be the same for everybody. If you're gonna be considered a resident in the town, you have to live here whatever the time you decide. I agree with, Leader, I think we should send this to the plans that I've left there and give us some recommendations. We all have pretty strong opinions on it, so.
Well, it's on the agenda for tomorrow night's planning and zoning, and I expect them to put it on a public hearing in August, so it's going to.
And I'm sending it to both of them with it, both ordinances, because I wanted them to give me their thoughts on it. And this is the reason I did this is because we're a very reactive government in our town, and I think we need to be proactive.
Yes.
So this is one thing that there may or may not have an issue happening, and we know that there already are 2 or 3 people that have RHS that don't live here but have an RHF.
I did
And
not know that.
there's a couple that don't live in that particular home, but it's okay, it's written this way, it's allowed, so there's nothing wrong with that at this point. Because they already do it, but it's more, I think we need to look at all of them, and if we see something that we're like, no, it shouldn't have been that way, even though somebody's not doing it, or it's not a problem, we need to address them in advance, so that's what this is, me being proactive.
I am going to do a little work, research. But one of the things I would like to be in whatever ordinance comes through is, whatever the final ordinance is, I would like something written in there that has to do with, penalties to be added.
With what?
Penalties for those who violate the code. I'd like to have something in there for that.
I just want to throw this in, penalties, I have no problem with it. How are we gonna enforce it? I think needs to be part of that. If there's gonna be penalties, how is it enforceable by law?
It's gonna be enforced by law, because I've got those laws right here that we're gonna look at later.
Right. That's my little thing. I hate it when we have stuff that I can't do anything.
Maybe
about.
we could just, with your proposed law that you have,
Mhm.
we just automatically say that at the end of every ordinance, we're going to add a thing that says fines will apply.
This is what,
Fines will apply and however they apply.
yeah, well, that, we'll discuss that when we get to this later on, which will be the last
That also
thing.
fixes-
It's not on the agenda, but I make copies for everybody of what I've done. And, we'll look at it as the last thing on the agenda. But I wanted to bring up that I wanted something in here about penalties.
Mhm.
We need to
Does
add
that, does that have penalties in it as far as dollar?
this,
Uh-huh. Okay.
it does indeed. I've
And
already
that's
sent
been
it off
bad
to,
for a long
I
time.
sent it off to James Weeks about an hour ago, before I came over here to say review and let us know what he thinks. Okay, So that's that item. Next item,
I just wanna know if I can find someone for the dog poop I found in my yard.
well, I know it's
And I
not,
know it's not blue.
I know it's not my dog. Um. Okay. So the next item I had on here was resolutions that we discussed at the last town council meeting. Now, I have a little bit, I struggled with coming up with a resolution about the name for Poplarville Park. And then I have one for the uniform fee schedule update that we'll talk about. The increase of resort tax, I have not prepared something. We had asked, Paul had asked Heath Snow to prepare one of those for us, at least 2 months ago. And we haven't seen anything, so I was gonna play with, I was gonna find the resolution where we instituted the resort tax. And then take that resolution and modify it to increase the resort tax and then send it off to Heath and see if he thought that was okay.
Yeah, that works. We decided at the commission meeting to request that Heath do it. I don't know, I never contacted Heath.
I haven't followed up with them on it. But I figure all we have to do is find the resolution that initiated the resort tax and just make some modifications to it.
And as far as the timing goes, I think that it may be too late to get it on the ballot for this year. If not, it'd be great.
I don't know that it is something that goes on the ballot. When we initiated the resort tax, it wasn't on the ballot.
My recollection, I haven't looked at the law in a couple of months, but my recollection is that it does have to go on the ballot. But I don't, but I'd have to go back and look at the
Are you
statute.
talking the Hurricane Valley Fire Department, or the thing that they did to try and collect the resort tax, or is this separate?
This is separate. This is, this is increase our current resort tax, an extra,
The state code says your resort tax can be X amount. Ours is
and
less.
we're at 1 and we could go to 1.5.
What you're talking about where the legislature added that,
Yeah,
that's,
that's different. That's gotta go to the vote. Yeah, and that would be on the ballot.
what's this that you're talking about?
It's a resort.
No, no,
We want to look to the legal one.
You're saying you think it's on the ballot?
No.
No, I'm saying that I think it's on, I think it's supposed to go on the ballot, but I'd have to,
And I said,
and I can't look it up now because I can't see.
and I said, I don't think it does.
So if it doesn't really, but if it does, then, but either way, it's not gonna take effect until next budget year anyway, so. But we're leaving money on the table, we should collect.
All right, so we're going to research if it goes on the ballot. Yes, you're about to say something?
No,
Oh, okay, so that was for number C. So now let's go back to 2A and we'll talk about that one first. So I was looking online at different seeing how towns had handled it when they were changing the name of the park. And I attached here for everybody with the word sample across it, which is the third page of your, right here, it looks like this.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a sample of, a resolution in another town here in Utah where they changed the name of the park. And they gave their reasons why, and I thought this was interesting for us to look at and see what their whereases were, okay? But they were changing the name of a park that had been previously named. And the reason I struggled as I was working on this was our park, this one that we call Poplarville Park, was never formally named. It was just, we started calling it Poplarville Park, and it's never actually had even a resolution naming it. So I was struggling with how I would word the resolution, and then I decided that we should just talk about it some more. For yet another month. But we might have a resolution by next week, depending on what we think. But this particular one, they were changing the name. They had a citizen who'd come in and made a presentation and asked them to change the name and proposed this name change. And then there were all these reasons why they were changing the name. And if we're not changing a name, we are actually naming it formally for the first time. So, so I also included the deed where, the previous owner had deeded the property to the town. And you can see there's not anything in this deed that has anything to do with about it being a park. They just deeded the property to the town, and that's it. And this OD Acquisition LLC, which was who deeded the property to the town, was a branch of I want to say Cash Valley Bank. I think that's what it was that had because remember the development was in bankruptcy. And so this was actually a branch that some subdivision of the bank.
Yeah, probably
Subdivision.
tax to, yeah.
So they deeded this to the town, and at the same time, I could have sworn the town bought all sorts of water rights from these guys. It's in our minutes when we got this from the bank. There was also in the minutes that we were buying all sorts of water rights, and I see no evidence of the town owning water rights from here, but I know we talk about it. We talked about buying water rights from them, and it was in all our minutes. Because Bruce wanted to buy every possible water right we could get, and we bought what we could afford, and so.
I think your whereas is just have to state the truth, you know, this been called by the public, Bill Park, it's never officially legally, named legally, and so we would like to.
Okay,
do that.
let me make my notes here.
Big blank blank.
Okay, well, that's kind of where I was going, but I thought, let's talk about it and see what we think the whereases would be, because even as I did the title, trying to come up with the title, well, like here, theirs was a resolution in support of changing the name of the blah, blah, blah park to blah, blah, blah park. I'm like, well, we're not actually changing the name, we're naming it for the first time, and so.
It was just a resolution in support of naming the park.
Well, yes, my problem was, I didn't want to use the word park, and so I was trying to go, okay, so what's the location? How do I say where this property
Put the ID
is?
number.
Naming property commonly known as.
Because that's what we do.
I know,
Do
but
with
get
zoning.
this, when you go to the county website, there's no parcel number for that property.
So call it.
There was no parcel number, there's no address, there's no nothing,
Put it in the
but there
top.
is this deed showing ownership to the town.
So reference the deed. Or T deed number.
Yeah.
At the top,
Okay,
then it makes it vague. I mean, not vague, but it gives it an exact place,
okay.
because the location.
Yeah, it
information
gives a section of township and a range.
Yeah, and it gives the location here, the exact legal description.
And see, I didn't know if I could put that entire legal description or just say
that
reference
special
this deed.
warranty deed, and then it has a number,
Okay,
because the county will reference that number.
Okay.
It's also the entry number.
okay, and then you were suggesting, Leroy, that we say this had been just informally known, locally known as.
We know that's fine.
Decided the name was at Pocketville Hollow.
Leroy suggested that we, because I had suggested, couldn't we just come up with like a placeholder name until, and if people don't like it, this is where Leroy had said, why don't we just name it that? If people object, then, and they want a different name, then we can pursue a different name. Yes, Paul.
Two things, one, going back to the previous item, make a note, it's 59-12-4.
Okay, wait. Okay, sorry. I was-
59-12-401 for the resort tax, and just much as I can read it, I think you're right, it does not require a vote, it just requires a resolution. So, but that's a section, take a look at it, my
Okay.
eyes are still not.
All right. The reason,
Parkerville Park, I like the idea of, if you're gonna do it, if you're gonna change the name, and I understand the reasoning behind doing it. At this point, I still think the citizens need to be involved, so I think what we need to do is, if you're gonna change it, do a placeholder and put it in a resolution until the public can decide. And then I think we've got to give the public 2 or 3 choices and then submit it to the citizens and make that selection. That would be my thoughts.
and that's very close to what Leroy had
That was
suggested
what
last.
Leroy said,
Yeah, very, almost identical.
So do we have already some names that you're?
No. No, I never did put it out there for the public, because I.
No, but we came up with that you can suggest to the public has 3 options.
All we discussed so far was Pocketville Hollow, and no one's really had any other names. If there's any other names, I'm open to writing them down.
Since you're doing a placeholder, why don't you request the board to submit potential names? We'll pick 3 from us at the council and then submit it to a vote of the public.
After we enact the paid placeholder.
Yeah, do the placeholder, then solicit multiple names. And if we get more than 3, we can pick the 3 that we like and submit to the public, which ones they like.
Okay.
And you can add a write-in to it if we need to know that.
Okay,
Didn't you guys have like something of Knoll or, you like Knoll or something?
just Hollow,
All of Providence, no,
Pocketville Hollow, because it's
Pocketville
down in a hollow.
like a hollow.
Then we can have our headless voice.
Oh, yes.
So we're gonna call it
Saturday
Hollow
Hollow.
instead of Pocketville, or we just call it the Hollow?
Yeah, instead of Bob Crane, we have to name
I
it.
think if we're, gonna take in the full effect of Southern Utah, we should call it Parkville Holler.
Holler. Yeah, you gotta add the R.
Okay, so this next resolution about amending the fee schedule. I added some fees on here for us to talk about. We initially, when we brought this up, we were talking about the conditional use permit fee. Increasing the fee to $1,000, given all the new stuff that's going to be taking place with the conditional use permit that involves the development review committee and the mini meetings, and it's just gonna take more work. And so we put the conditional use permit fee at 400 is just inadequate to cover the costs that are gonna be involved. And so we talked about increasing that, but I wondered if there were other fees that we would want to increase at the same time. Now, I have here a copy of the ordinance in 2015 when we raised fees. And on that one, we just said what the new fee was, but we didn't say what the former fee was. So I don't know what actually was raised and what wasn't when I look at the ordinance from 2015. This is an old ordinance where we raise fees. And in 2015, when we raised fees, the fees that the town charged had been unchanged since 1985. So they had been 30 years where our fees had been unchanged. And so at this point, we changed them, and this is what the fees are now. $100 for the building permit. Building permit fee is based on valuation. Plan check fee is 40% of the building permit fee. The building inspector fee is $50 for each inspection. And let's see if that's still the way it is. I think that's still, I have a fee schedule here. Let's see. Building inspector fee, yeah, $50 each after 10 inspections. And then we have a zoning administrator fee, which will go away now that we have a development review committee. And then fire district reviews at actual cost. I went ahead and just wrote in excavation permit and grading fee on this resolution, just to show you that. And when you look at this fees, where we increased fees in 2015, we had excavation permit fees and grading fees, which have both been removed from the code, and now there's no fee for those. And it's just whether or not, and I don't intend for this to be right now, but it's just whether, or that is just for us to think about whether or not we need to go back and start charging fees for those, because that's a lot of money that the town basically, as Paul put it, left on the table. And everybody else charges excavation and grading permit fees, except for us.
But if they were removed because they were thought of as part of the business application fee.
Now, my understanding is they were removed because it was just to encourage development in town so that they didn't have to pay these.
On grading,
And the excavation.
no, it's eliminated because the town's not doing anything for it. That's what his argument was, is that what is the town providing as a service to be collecting this fee? These other things, there's a service being provided. What are you providing for excavation?
Okay, well,
I
I
do,
didn't.
I'm just telling you, that's why it was removed.
Okay, but I can tell you that everybody else charges.
Do
Other
we do an
towns charge.
excavation permit? Do we do
No.
an excavation inspection?
Nope, nothing.
Do we do a grading?
The only time those are done is if it's on public property,
Then
like if they're messing with the street or something like that, we don't require it on
But
private.
I can tell you from my review, we'll get, when we get to the penalty thing that I have here, that when I went through other towns, they have penalties for people excavating without a permit, excavating with this, grading, they have all sorts of penalties for this that we don't have, because we don't have permits or fees for that. I just put that in there for us to talk about, but I'm not expecting this to be part of the resolution. It was just to put it in everybody's
we do
mind.
have an excavation permit though.
If you're excavating on public lands, if you're messing with a
Right.
street or sidewalk, yeah, you have to have one. But if it's on your own private property, there's nothing in that.
Right.
Now, there are arguments for and against. I personally obviously lean towards, hey, it's your private property, but at the same time, if a person comes in and digs a freaking huge hole in their property and then abandons it for 10 years, now it's an eyesore for the town. So I do think there's argument. I was under the mayor, this, after 10 inspections,
Yeah,
he charges $50 per inspection
I thought so.
as it is, but I personally think we should increase the number after 10. Well, number one, when Mr. Gifford goes away, when he retires, I should say that sounds horrible. He's gonna retire at some point completely.
Mhm.
We're not gonna find another building inspector that's gonna be $50 fees.
I know, I agree. I think the building inspector fee should be increased. We're already increasing the conditional use permit fee. We talked about that. Fire district is actual cost. I don't know, what I don't know, because I went ahead and wrote on here, development review fee. And currently we charge none because we haven't done anything. So I don't know if there should be a development review fee or if that is just
I think that's paid for in my,
in the
So-
conditional use. Well,
Well, there is a subdivision fee of $1,000.
but I'm just saying for development, if we're talking like a small commercial business, somebody's putting a restaurant. That's right, I've been getting that money I'm making. It's a zoning
Yeah.
administrator, in my mind.
the,
I really,
I don't know. I don't know.
I really like the additional after hour
Where?
for your water reconnect. That is.
Wait. Okay, so you're looking at the fee schedule when
That's
you're,
already been passed. That was
Yeah, they-
passed with
I
the
just thought it was in red. so
No,
we
she's
were looking at it.
talking about these ones that are.
I'm just talking about-
this paper.
I'm just talking about these ones on the, resolution.
On the second one, everything in red is already in place.
Everything on this page is already in. place.
Yeah.
Everything-
This-
That's already passed.
Everything's
This is
already-
what our, Gene, this is what our fees are right now. Whatever's here is what our fees are right now. And I started a list of, I just put building fees. I was looking at things involved in building. But I did not know if there were any other fees related to building that we should increase. This is why I just started this list and said, let's talk about it. And what other fees do you think our fees should go up? Because we've had a lot. I mean, all Crystal's been working on, it seems like, as long as I've been mayor, is nothing but this kind of stuff. building, development, and everything else she's supposed to be doing isn't getting done because she's too busy with this stuff, which is not necessarily the clerk's job. And so I'm just wondering, because she's been so busy with all this, if these fees should go up because they're taking so much time, if these fees are too low.
Can I make a
I think
couple?
your zoning administration fee, I think you should wrap that into development review fee. I don't think that should go away, even though I'm a salary instead of that,
Uh,
that's helping pay that salary.
yes, I agree.
So I think that should just be moved over to become your development.
Development
That's what
review,
you-
okay,
that's what-
all right, that's a good idea.
So which one? was that?
He's suggesting that where we have here, where the zoning administrator fee is, that we move that to be development review fee.
That makes sense.
I think the town should be collecting for that.
And when I talked with Heath recently about the development review, he said that the development review covers more than just conditional use permits.
Right.
There's all sorts of things that are gonna be going through development review, and that's why I wondered if we need an actual development review fee.
So just as an example, this is the way I see it. If somebody comes to me and says, okay, what do I need to get this application? And it says on here, fire permit, how do I do that? I send them off to get the fire. They say, what do I get for the sewer? I'm sending them off that time
Right.
that you're paying me to do.
Right.
Or whoever's, so I have no problem with moving that.
Can we add that, so we have development review fee, we're gonna go ahead and do that. Why don't we add it up in this, where the subdivision section is up at the top?
Mhm.
And then also add it into the conditional use section.
Is there a section on conditional?
No, it's just looked it up.
Instead, I suggest you leave it where it's.
See, I thought that was
No,
weird.
add that, add it, leave that one there,
Okay,
but because you're reviewing subdivisions,
well,
And
I
you
don't
are-
actually, that's commission, but
but
regardless.
do they ask you questions and you say, well, you need to do this, this, and this, so that's my other question.
Right, but they do that when they go to the bill.
But we're gonna have this
We get
big
double
meeting
that.
for conditional uses especially, we're gonna have this big meeting of our collaboration.
I get that.
That
I'm just
maybe we
saying,
should add it, I don't
here
know.
we go, if you move it up to subdivision, now we're gonna charge $600 for the subdivision, and then when they go to bill, another $600. Do we wanna do it that way? I mean,
No, that makes
I'm
sense,
just-
no, that makes sense.
I don't know,
There's already a setup fee right here per divided lot.
Because one of
So-
the things that Keith was saying with this development review committee is there's nothing that says there's only one meeting of the development review committee. There could be many meetings
Right.
before this, and so we would have, you're gonna be at the meetings. This new clerk is gonna be at the meeting, she's gonna be taking minutes, he or she's gonna be taking minutes, they're gonna be doing all sorts of stuff. And so that's why I was like, we're gonna be doing more services and we need to be paid
The
for it.
subdivision process by itself is so big. And
Okay,
then you add the conditional use process, our new conditional use process, and it's gonna be big as well. That's the only reason I was suggesting those, but it does make sense in the subdivision, especially, we're charging them in the subdivision. And then we charge them again in the building, that makes sense. But maybe we need to look at our.
I don't know, I think if you move the conditional use permit from 400 to 1,000.
yeah,
Keep those zoning administrative fees as they are, but move them and call it,
but call them development review and
but
put,
you're still collecting.
okay, and put 600 and 300 depending on if it's commercial or
That's
residential.
my suggestion.
Okay,
I don't know.
that's a possibility. What do you think, Mr. Glasses?
Already, right?
Do we know how much we collected last year in those fees?
Which fees? Zoning administrator fees?
Yes.
I would have to ask, we would have to ask Sil.
Yeah, if we don't have a breakdown on the finance.
It'd be
Yes,
easy to be-
I'd like to see a breakdown of the financial, because I want to make sure that we're charging enough to cover our expenses.
Well,
It'd be
okay,
easy, because you just, every building application, every building permit application collects that. If it's turned in, so it's easy, you just count how many building application, commercial and residential, and there's your number.
Yeah, what's, do we have, can we get that number?
we can ask,
Yeah.
yes, we can ask
It-
Sil.
it- Having the option is going to be a second.
Yeah.
And then the building permit application fee of $100, I didn't know if that, I was gonna look around at some of the other towns around here and see if they're, I was gonna do that today, and instead I started working on this, penalty thing.
You know, it had that $100 for a long time, it's gotta be.
It's gotta
I'd
be,
also like, I mean, my suggestion would be to split that as well, commercial, residential.
Yes,
Yeah,
oh, okay.
And do we have an idea what the new clerk is gonna be paid? I know all the money isn't gonna be coming from zoning, but it'd be nice to make sure.
That's partly why I was also wanting to, talk about raising these fees to help cover this person's salary, because they're going to be doing a lot more work than has been done.
That's what the purpose of
The fees
the
are.
hire was. So
Yes.
we wanna make sure that we charge them fees to cover that service.
Yeah,
At least some of them.
and so so meanwhile, for the building inspector fee, you wanted to raise it, but to what?
$100 or $150.
Honestly, I think we should probably leave it until Lance.
And I'm talking about the building inspector, not the building application. The
Yeah.
building inspector, we said $50 is not enough. I'm wondering what it should
well,
be.
but then we're backtracking real fast to try to put it back on there.
Right, but what can we legally collect money that we're not paying in? He's
Yeah,
collecting
it's-
$50.
Well,
So,
Crystal has to
okay.
go through the process.
Yes,
Lance has said he does more than 10 inspections on a house.
No, that's
And
not that.
Oh, are you talking about how?
I'm just saying, can we legally move that dollar amount if that's all he's collecting? Is this the building inspector fee?
Mhm.
I'm just asking.
Yeah,
can we
Well,
move this?
Can you move it?
the town spends time verifying. it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So we can raise it more than what we pay.
She
him.
has to
Yes,
go
I
through his
agree.
receipts and
Yeah.
take them.
Yeah, well, Lance gives us our receipts quarterly.
Right.
And by the time he gives us a receipt, sometimes they already got their CO, and I'm gonna tell you what, they ain't gonna pay.
Right.
That's always been the problem.
They are not gonna pay the extra amount that they owe from them.
He needs to bring us things more
So
than.
when I was back there, it was on average of at least 15 inspections minimum is what I.
And now it's 10.
So it's, I know. That's how
Oh, I
many
see.
he had done.
I see.
So we always ended up having to charge after the fact, which we did not get
Yeah,
most of the time, and that's just because it's done, they don't want to, they're done.
So the original 10 inspections are included in their,
He collects 50 per, yes, that's part of their.
part of the building, valuation
For
fee
type
that is.
of that.
He puts- My suggestion, let's get to, until such time as Lance goes and retires, up that additionals.
To 100?
Hefty, where because it's, and I'm saying for, especially for residential, there is no need to have 10 inspections. You can build a house with about 4 or 5 at the max. Having 10 is because they're not doing it right, so they're.
So are we
I'm
gonna
do my
reduce the number?
Each,
So should we reduce the number of inspections that's included in the fee that they initially pay,
I'm not saying that, I'm just saying.
which
that
is
if they go
the
beyond,
building permit?
if they go beyond the 10, so right now we're saying we're charging you $50 for inspection, because he charges $500 up front. Maybe we should be saying, all right, if it goes over the 10, it's this amount, or you just move it up to
He's
15.
charging us $500 right off the bat.
Yeah, that's the 10 inspections.
Yes, but what I'm asking is if the $500 should be for 5 inspections, not 10, but 5. And then if there's more than that, they pay this fee. This is what I'm asking. Is 10
You're
too
in the
much?
same, we're in the
Is
same
10
boat.
too many inspections that we're letting them have for $500?
You know what, and would you mind if I talk to Les
No.
about how many he thinks? he-
No, this is all a discussion, so.
I'd like to find out, because I know we're in the process of building and it's 3 or 4. I mean, you've got your initial 4, your 5-way, and then.
I think we're really lowering it instead of
Lowering the number.
lowering the number, not the price. Necessarily, because then after 5 inspections, the charge comes in.
But what he's saying is that there's nobody out there other than Lance is probably gonna charge $50 for an
Yeah.
inspection.
yeah, but the problem is, Steve, is I don't get those receipts until super late anymore.
Well, that question was gonna be, how do we collect?
Well, that's what
That's-
Wade and I were just kind of saying that he needs to start bringing his things monthly, not.
Yeah.
Here's a thought, we could fix both maybe. What if we said, all right, we're gonna lower it? The lower inspections, you're gonna pay for, when you pay your thing up front, you're gonna pay for 15 total inspections. But you'll be refunded based on what we get as the fund.
Is that what you're thinking too?
That's why.
Yeah.
That's why.
Because that way it's in our hands to refund that.
You set a minimum amount that's gonna be, you set a higher amount, and at the minimum, you're gonna pay this no matter what. If it takes, maybe it's 5 inspections, but it only takes 3, you still pay the 5 inspection amount. But you charge them for 15 inspections, and you refund the difference between 5 and 15.
What?
Well, other towns have.
Call other towns and see what they do as far as their fees go for building.
Well, they don't have the same problem of,
Other towns have the inspector as an employee like.
Is an employee of the town.
The monthly thing of having him submit monthly, maybe that could be something that the new clerk could, the new.
The permit clerk could
Is
fall
going
with him
to,
and
could call and be the one that starts to do that, so that those phone calls don't have to be made by
Crystal.
Crystal, there's more time to do it now.
I just.
I like the idea of charging him for 15, and if it only takes 5, we refund the difference.
The reason,
But what's our,
And raising the fee,
raising the fee, right?
and still raising the
and
fee
still raising the fee.
to $100.
I agree with you, Ryan.
but it's still.
But it's the 15, but,
Residential.
but the 15,
It gives us $1,500.
okay, so we're gonna charge 1,500, not 500. Okay,
1,500, and then we'll refund it, it only takes 5.
And can I suggest we split that and make it more inspections for commercial?
But now, if I'm,
Yeah,
now,
Be
if
double that.
I'm adding on to my house and I pay you $1,500 right off the bat
You will.
for 15
That's what
inspections.
this suggestion is saying.
yeah. And then.
But that's also a big incentive
double.
to not get commercial inspection.
Right,
right, get your
For
money back.
commercial,
That's
Okay.
big.
so
All right.
commercial will pay 200, and they get 15. There you go.
Okay, so if you talk to Lance,
I'll do that.
you talk to Lance. Let me know, and then how many inspections we want for residential, how many for commercial. We talked about 15, so that I can have this for next
For next week.
week.
We
I'd
need,
like to have it for next week. We can meet, you want to change it to
I
Friday?
just think that evenings or not evenings, but afternoons. I don't care the day, but just.
Hold on, let me see what I have this Thursday, because I can maybe do it this Thursday, and then that gives me Friday, then I can be free to go do some other things. The 13th, yeah, we can do the afternoon, Thursday afternoon.
Okay.
Okay,
Want to just send me an invite?
okay, so you put it on your calendar, okay, all right.
when you call Lance, will you ask him if there's a way, when he does that paper that says, okay to occupy, and it comes back to the town, and then the town issues a thing, if there's any way for him to write down how many inspections he did on that house?
I'll ask him. I know his answer. He's not super organized.
No,
We're getting our $50.
that's what I'm asking, ask him and see if, because that would solve half the problem, is it the CO, if I could say, CO, ready to occupy 20 inspections. Then when you go, say, you can come and collect your condition, you can come and collect your certificate of occupancy once you pay the extra $500.
The reason I like the refund idea better. I know that it's expensive
We
upfront,
can have a check for him too.
but you could get everything together. But the
Right.
reason I like the refund idea more than anything is because it's incentive to get less inspections. Now, they have to get inspections, but a lot of times we'll get people to call for an electrical when they could have waited and called for the 5-way and got all of it done at once.
Yes.
So they're doing piecemeal inspections, calling it off.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's where we're losing money.
Right.
and so why do you like the idea of the refund?
Just because we have the money and we're not losing the money.
Yeah.
We have the money.
So you're saying that after the fact, they're not gonna pay us because they've already got their CO, and this is okay.
What I like is we're in control.
Yeah. And the other thing is if, I think we should raise the fee a little more than what Lance is getting, because we have some administrative costs that we need to capture.
Yes, we're gonna raise it to 100,
We're gonna raise it
to
to
$100, we're gonna.
100 for residential and 200 for commercial.
Okay, and Lance only gets a portion of that and the rest covers our
And the
own.
rest
Yes.
covers our-
Yes. So 100 for residential, 200 for commercial,
Yeah.
so what you guys said?
Will you still ask Lance that, because
Oh, I see.
for the
You just have to remember, you know,
It's
Lance.
easier to
dog,
do it
you
that
can
way.
Talk with no talk, so
You don't just ask it, I'm not saying
Yeah.
force or be aggressive, I'm just asking if we can.
you don't want me to threaten them.
No,
I'm just joking.
not
Yeah,
today.
But meanwhile, on the building permit application fee, that's still $100. We're talking about the application fee.
I think that could be split residential, commercial.
To be what,
100 residential.
200 commercial?
Or even more than 200 commercial, it just
The problem with
depends.
commercial in everything is there's just more work. So if somebody comes in for residential, they're just getting a sewer permit. If somebody comes in for commercial, they're interfacing with the state, we have to have letters and all this extra garbage.
That's a lot more.
It
I'd
is.
say 500.
It's
So I'm
so
saying-
much work.
I was just thinking.
You're so-
500 and then 100 for residential,
Yeah.
just leave it,
Okay.
because that's,
And it's so much more
it's
people.
minimal.
I think though, when we get this all kind of ironed out, we should look at it again. because
Yeah.
These people.
Yeah, because we can, I mean, I'll put this on the agenda next week with, the new figures that we've talked about, whatever you find out from Lance. But if we get to the meeting next week and we say we still want some more time to look at it, that's fine.
Yeah,
I think we're,
It's not, there's no time limit.
I think if you go out and look too, we're gonna find that we're actually still on the lean end of,
Yeah.
of
Low,
fees. We
low.
don't- Yeah, because we don't, we're not charging as much as other places. I
now,
know that at one time we charged a lot more and they've all caught up now. So,
And I should say this, I'm not interested in matching what everybody else has. I want to do what's right,
I just want to know that we're not,
way out of the ballpark.
I'm gonna start, well, yeah, I'm gonna use,
But we don't need to
I'm
lose
gonna
money.
use Paul's term of leaving money on the table. Why? So,
how about this development review fee? Why are we not charging something? Because we have to review it.
that's what we're gonna do. What
We
we,
just talked about moving this,
we decided to move the zoning administrator fee
which is 600 and 300.
to be the development
So
review.
that's 300 for residential and 600 for commercial.
Yeah,
Is that enough for commercial?
I don't know. Well, the question's gonna be, and this is what we have to talk about, because there's he said, when we start this new process, there is nothing that says there's only one development review committee meeting. There could be many before somebody gets their final
Oh, yeah.
say, and before it ever goes to planning commission.
That's correct.
And so therefore, do we base it on per meeting? Do we base a one big lump sum? So 300, 600 may not be enough. We may have to,
But if we're-
increase both of them.
and if, but if we're also charging them in their building fee at the same time, we're increasing the amount they have to pay in their application.
I said, I'm kind of thinking back the same thing on that.
What?
Maybe for your, you just got your DRC meetings, you're setting it up as, you're gonna pay for this many meetings and we'll refund you. It's an enticement
Yeah.
for developer to get their craft in order before they come in.
Yeah, the less meetings, the
Right.
less money.
So,
What's the cost?
so we set it up what, for 4 meetings? I'm just throwing out.
It could be because like, so far, this one guy with this one project he's had, I've had 3 meetings with him. And Gene came to one of them, but we're gonna have another. And so we're gonna be at 4 meetings where Gene's been at 2 of them. The first one was just whether or not, do you think I'll be able to do this? And then the next one, Gene was there and, we're gonna have more meetings in this.
Put that on your list, make it 4 minutes.
But aren't we just talking about DRC meetings, not meetings with us?
Right.
But
That's
they're
kind of
going to charge us one whole,
Yeah.
one fee. And if
Yeah,
they
we're
make
talking
it
about the
like
DRC
building
meetings.
The one fee
And-
that says per week, the building inspection fee.
And these meetings that Gene and I had with him, it was just us and Chase. We did not have the utilities there. He had kind of started this before this DRC ordinance got passed. So he was already out talking to the utility companies, but we're gonna have a meeting with all of them there for probably the next time.
So what do you want?
I would say
I
you're
just threw a
thinking
number.
4 meetings. You said 4, which I thought was a reasonable way to
So
start.
based on what you're saying, 4 is a reasonable start.
Yeah,
We've already
because
had
we're about to have
and that's without a committee,
Yes,
so.
and what do you think, Paul? With a number of meetings? Charging a fee based on a set number of meetings, then refunding.
I'll have to see what the figure is, but let's go with you, Lloyd.
Or,
I
Now we're
know,
talking 4 meetings or what's the 4? Tell me what all that's covering.
It's just 4 meetings of the DRC
4 meetings that you see for CUPs.
or anything. Are you thinking there'll be more meetings depending on what the project is?
Well, a lot of this, especially in residential, but even in commercial, a lot of this stuff does not require, they're going for a building permit, does not require us to bring in a full meeting. So if they're
No,
going to the
no.
state or the fire department,
So,
that's not something that
Are you talking
requires
just
us.
add
We
it
don't gain
conditional
anything.
use?
I'm not offering the service.
because I think that's where you're coming from, right? Because you're saying, are you, I don't know, and I could be off base. Are you saying that because we should put it in the conditional use fee that way?
Well, that's all the.
Better than the
covers by
other-
ordinance is.
Because the development fee that we're already charging, that was the zoning administrator fee, will cover
Right.
for building permits. But it won't cover for what we're talking about. in the
Right, because there's
conditional
gonna
use.
be other
Right,
things
so we
that
need
go
to
to
add it into the
DRC.
conditional use section instead.
But
I
there's
was just thinking of quotes for the DRC.
DRC.
Yeah,
Is
which
that-
would be a commercial type
Because
thing.
there may be some things that go to DRC that do not involve conditional
Right,
use.
for building permits separate.
That's,
Well, they're
Yeah,
two
you're right.
separate things.
yes,
The building permit is also for our,
And I think we.
they're not gonna have a DRC,
right.
and
People
we're
that are coming
paying for
in,
4 meetings. as a
building, people
person
that are
buying
building,
the
just,
building
people that are building the house are not gonna. try
Right,
to
so
go
that's
to
why I'm saying we
DRC.
need to keep up, we need to have a separate one for this specific part of the conversation. I don't know if we need to call it a DRC fee instead of a development fee, but I think those two things have to be kept.
Well,
It's just a lot.
the DRC is for Development Review Committee.
Right,
It's just the fee for the Development Review Committee.
but
So
that's, we just
that's what
need
this
it.
is.
a lot of towns just include it in when they file an application, but it covers everything. And so when you come in and file a subdivision application or a zone change application or.
Right, the
conditional use
DRC
permit,
Fee would-
the DRC fee is already incorporated in that total fee that they pay for that application.
Well,
You
then,
don't usually charge a separate one.
oh, then if we're gonna do that, then we have to raise the price for the zone change fee and the subdivision fee and this fee
Yeah.
and that fee. That's why I want to know what fees do we need to include, to raise
I mean,
to
you
cover
could,
this.
you could do it either way. Other fees low, you charge for a DRC fee, or you just charge one fee and have it all incorporated in that.
I think the biggest concern I have honestly with the DRC is, we're thinking, in our minds, we think of things like the money budget. But that slushy guy would have to pay the same fees, and it's gonna have to be the same process because it's a conditional use. So that, we either need to start reviewing what's conditional use and making some of the stuff permitted, or there's gotta be some kind of a break. The little guys aren't gonna be able to come in and do business in town.
Okay.
So just stuff to think about.
Then put it in the
You know,
application like Paul said, and you charge a commercial, and you charge a resident.
Right.
You can still do what they want, such as in,
For meetings.
yeah, you can still do that in there. Here's your application fee. And if you have, less than 5 meetings, you get X amount back of DRC. I mean, you should, we can do it any way you want on that.
I'm just worried about the cost up front, the small guy is a problem. The cost up front, the big guy, they just wrap it up. It's just part of the deal.
So we'll have to consider, even within commercial, maybe there's a different level.
Right.
Okay,
Sole proprietorship or LLC.
Maybe we can start splitting our fees,
start what?
splitting our fees, residential, commercial,
Yeah,
Yeah.
instead of having them, and everything is split that way.
all right, we've got work ahead of us.
I'll throw a couple more before we leave it. On the fire district review, sewer, I don't think we should charge people because we're not really providing a service. They're gonna.
I think, I took this to mean, I agree with you, they'll pay the fee, and it doesn't come through us.
We just get the receipt back from them.
No, it states that on there,
Yeah.
States
Yeah, it says
what?
on the
on
fee
our fee
schedule.
schedule, it says it on there.
Says what?
It's not paid to us.
That it's not paid to us, but they have to prove that they paid us.
Right.
For the fees. All right, it doesn't say
This is
that,
actual
it
cost,
just says actual cost, that's what this
but it
says.
says it on the
Actual-
application. It does say it on the building permit
Does
application.
it say in the little fees on this side?
No,
On the application, it does.
Why does that, why do we even need, yeah, I don't think that.
That probably doesn't even need to be there.
Yeah, it was the
It's part of the-
yeah, we can take it completely off.
All right, so we'll take that out. All right. Whew. Boy, that discussion was a lot longer than I thought.
It's good.
I know, I agree.
It hasn't been done in a while.
It hadn't been done in a while. So,
So this is a variant for our own property.
yes, this is a variance for our own property. Paul insisted that I needed to do this, so I said, okay.
When I saw this, I just wanted to say kudos, because I've watched this not happen in a couple other towns where the town says, we're the town. We can do what we
What
want.
we want.
This is the right way to do it.
So I wanted you guys to look at my, man, when I was looking at this on my computer screen, I didn't know this was gonna be so small. Well, on my computer screen, it was big. My explanation is like, I need a magnifying glass to read it.
I'll have to read it tomorrow.
I'll read it out loud, because they want a written description. So here's what I said. I said, Virgin Town needs to install a small office building, and then parentheses, I have 12 by 20 on town property to be an office for the public works employees. This town property already has a fire station on the west side of the property with a fenced yard to the north of the fire station. The attached map shows, and you look at the map, it's got the, it's on the back side. It's color, and it says the attached map shows a storage container immediately next to the fenced yard. That storage container has since been moved in eastward, and the office building is intended to be installed in the place where the storage container now sits. This will place the office building in the setback. VUU 3414 requires a 10-foot setback for accessory buildings, but the office building needs to be placed 3 feet from the property line or 7 feet within the setback. That is where the storage container has been sitting for the past decade or more. If we adhere to the 10-foot setback, then the office building will block access to the gated yard. The town simply wants to place the office building on the same site where the storage container has been sitting for the past decade or more without objection by anyone. The office building will not be a permanent structure, but we do plan to run power to the building, which violates, and I put VUU ? And I checked around, because there's nothing in VUU that talks about that, about that a permanent structure, but you can't, a temporary building can't have power run to it. It doesn't say that, but apparently that's in the International Building Code.
No, sorry, I'm looking up something else. I don't think you need it. I'm pretty sure if the building is a temporary structure that can be moved, it can be in the setback.
I agree, but somebody told me that if we run electricity to it, it's no longer a temporary building.
Not true, but.
And I disagree.
So, yeah, no, that's, you're right, there. They don't need, no. That does not change the building.
We also have a thing.
It just triggers a permit. So the way we have it in our ordinance, you can build a temporary structure up to, I think, 200 square feet or 400 square feet. I have to look at it again, without a permit. And it can be in the setback because it can be moved.
Right,
But if you do a foundation, if you do power, water, or toilet, it triggers a building permit. That's it.
Okay, we're not building a foundation, it's just gonna sit on the ground, there's no foundation, the area where it's gonna go is cleared and ready for it to just be set down, but it's not gonna have concrete pad.
So we need a building.
So,
No, what I'm saying is I don't think we need a variance.
okay, well, let me read the last sentence, it just said, a variance to the 10-foot setback is required for the municipality to install the public works office building so that it does not block access to the gated public works yard located immediately next to the desired location. So,
I'm sorry, we do need this.
what?
We do need this.
So, there's carports you're thinking of?
Yeah.
Okay.
It says here, non-permanent utility sheds under 400 square feet without public utility. Is an exception to a building permit, but it has to maintain site yard setbacks.
Okay,
It's just carports.
okay, so we do need this. So in the meantime, I wanted everyone to look at this, to know we're requesting a variance for this, and then if I need to change the wording in this description of why we're requesting the variance. if my description could be better stated. Maybe it's, this was just me typing off the top of my head today. Any suggestions? Did it sound okay? Did it need to?
Sounds good, except I can't read it.
Yeah, I know. I need to, that's why I read it out to you. You know,
I know,
So I just
I
said,
was just giving you a bad now.
but I said the office building will not be a permanent structure, but we do plan to run power to the building which violates, and then I have a question mark. And what is it that it violates? Is it the International Building Code? Is it the section that says carports can be in the setback, but nothing else? I mean, I don't know what it violates.
That's all it is, the building permit. So for someone who is not the town, obviously, if you are building something of that size and it gives public utility connections, then it triggers a building permit. Otherwise, it's an exception. So that's all that's
And
true.
isn't there a deed restriction that we do that says,
Yeah, there's
in
something else.
essence, that says, if you build in our setback, you understand that if we have to tear it down at any point to put a road in or whatever.
That's
Yeah, that's
what carports, and that's not because they don't require a building permit or anything, you can just put it in.
Right,
So we had put that at one point that you have to have a deed restriction case that's approved.
So the thing about the carports, we talked about whether or not we needed to do a variance for the shade structure. But I'm arguing that the shade structure, if you look at the section on carports, it says shade structures, comma, such as carports, comma,
Structures such as.
and then it talks about what shade structure does, and that's exactly what the shade structure is. It does not technically a carport, because what's in it is not a car, and it's on public land, not private.
but it's
land.
but
But it's a shade structure.
I'll read it. It says structures such as carports, which are meant for protecting vehicles from the sun.
And that's what it is.
And I was in
And
required
these are-
Equipment, it's a bit.
Okay, because I was like, it's,
are allowed within required setbacks for the purpose of off-street parking, with the understanding the structure may need to be removed in the future at owner's expense to accommodate future infrastructure as long as they provide all of it. And there is, the deed restriction is a deed restriction of liability to be notarized and recorded in the county assessor's office property deed. And that's just so the fire department comes in and plows your shed over. You understand it's your problem.
okay. You're gonna say,
I think you could just leave out that sentence that it violates.
I'll just take that out.
Yeah, just take that out.
Okay, Paul, what have you thought based on listening to what we've said? What comments do you have?
I'll read it tomorrow and send you any comments. I
Okay.
have. The question I have when I was listening to it is, what is the hardship owing to the unique configuration of the land for us? So I thought you covered it, but I need to read it in light of that standards.
I did get the measurements of where, and if you need me to put the measurements in, I can. But I had Chase go out and measure, if we went for the 10-foot setback, where would the building go? And we measured it, and I mean, it totally sits in the way of moving the gate.
Yeah.
I mean, you can move the gate, but you're not gonna get into the yard because we're blocking the access.
When you were reading it, it sounded like you met the hardship.
Yeah, it's just that I didn't put in
I think
measurements.
you should add the fact also that for a hardship, another point is the fact that shared property and there are fire trucks that have to.
Okay, all right, bring up the fire, okay, bring up the fire trucks. Okay.
I looked at the shade structure
Uh-huh,
and we should have, is there room to put on another layer?
yes,
It looked like that to me,
yes,
because we don't have all the equipment. We still
No,
have
Chase-
equipment outside.
Chase and I talked about that, because I looked at it, and I said, there's enough room here for us to extend another section and put more equipment in there, because he wants to sell that tractor that's sitting over there. He said they don't use it at all. In fact, we couldn't even get it. They had a hard time getting it started. They were trying to use it. And they were still waiting on a part to come in for that skid steer or
Yeah.
skid, whatever it's called. They were waiting for a part and they needed to go do something and the part hadn't come in, so they were trying to get the tractor running and said they were just like, can we get rid of this? And, after this part came in, they're like, we'll never use this thing. And so they want us to sell it. And, so that will not go into the shed. But there is other equipment, like over at the thing on the highway, there's a truck over there that's sitting in the sun. That could go in the
And
shade.
there's also the other tractor, what do you call that? The big one,
The backhoe,
yeah, the backhoe, yeah, the backhoe's not in
It's not in there?
the shed, no,
Okay,
yeah. And yeah, besides the skip.
we should have gotten a bigger shade structure.
let's get it on. So we're putting it on.
We'll put it over to the, around the side. Okay, all right, so let me see, finish my notes here about bringing up fire trucks and movement of trucks. Okay. And then that just goes straight to the appeal authority, correct? Yeah, okay, all right, so I had on here to talk about workforce housing. Oh, no, sorry, number 4. Need for third-party engineer to represent the town on the Labrie project. So, talked with Carl Rasmussen about what he actually, he's the Labrie's engineer. And we need a third-party engineer representing the town to oversee that project. Carl cannot be their engineer and be the town engineer. And so Chase went down and met with him and asked a number of questions about how things work there. And we specifically asked, who represents the town? And he said, well, I'll just tell Chase what to do and Chase can do this. And we're like, no, absolutely not. That is not the right way. We need an engineer to be representing the town on the project. So I've approached Ensign, who did the third-party plan review, bring us a proposal to be the engineer on the project. And they were supposed to get me a proposal by today, and they didn't have time. But they're working on a proposal to be the town's engineer on the Labrie project. Because we don't have anybody representing the town as an engineer, which our town engineer normally would be doing. And we've got a couple of other projects in town where Carl is the engineer of the developer.
There's just so few engineers and good.
Well, that's why with Ensign, it's like, we could use them as the third-party engineer on, you use them to do the plan review on
See, that's-
Buffalo too, right?
Right, well, this is the kicker on this one. They are doing third-party review. Should I didn't know, I guess I didn't know, I just haven't thought about it. They're doing a third-party review on that because the commercial projects require a third-party review. So if they become the town engineer for Labrie and
They can't do the third-party.
Rasmussen's gonna do, then I gotta get a third engineer to look at it.
Okay, so we should get somebody else to be the town engineer instead of Ensign.
We're kind of like 2 minutes to midnight. Everything's done for the most part on the Labrie project as far as the engineers' reviews. So now we're gonna open it up and have it reviewed by another engineer.
But we have to have somebody, but we gotta have somebody. I mean,
Well, it's
if it's,
probably good, but I mean, this is not some new thing. This has been going on since we.
I know, but it should have been put in place a while back. Once Carl became the engineer for the town, we needed to put somebody in place, and I never quite realized that
We had the
he
same,
was their
we
engineer.
had the same thing when Rod was here. There's a couple of projects where he was in both.
Uh-huh,
And I know we've had some projects where Rasmussen was in both as well.
okay,
And I don't mind splitting it out. I'm just wondering how we want to go about this with Labrie, because now we're basically gonna go back and say, oh, we're gonna take the review that's almost finished with Ensign. And we're gonna have to take it to another engineer's review.
no, we can leave Ensign as the third-party plan review. He's already been doing work.
Right.
I was just thinking we should work with Ensign to be that represent the town, because he already knows the project, because they've been doing some work.
That's fine.
But if
You
we
understand
don't,
what I'm saying? Anytime there's a big commercial project, let's just say Rasmussen was not representative. of debris, let's say it's you're doing a salon. And you have your own engineer, and we have Rasmussen, and it's a large salon, it's a big project. The building inspector requires a third party.
Yeah, I
to
understand,
review all.
I understand.
With this one, I'm just saying, we've only had Ensign looking at it as the
Yeah.
secondary eyes.
Yes,
And
Well,
that's-
isn't there more than just the plan review, it's also, checking and following up on different review,
There-
different things that occurred during the construction.
there's other stuff.
Yeah,
for the engineers.
this has to do with, the building inspector does not want one or even two, like, two engineers, just the town does it, they do it, and they send it in, he wants a third set of uninterested eyes looking at those projects, so that he knows, hey, they're not just bum rushing something through.
So you're saying get someone other than Ensign?
No, I'm saying Ensign is fine, but what I'm saying is you've only had, if we're going with this, we've only got two sets of eyes,
Instead of three.
three, and I imagine that whereas he's up in Salt Lake, Lance will probably be okay with it. I can ask him when I call
Who's
him.
Lance?
He's our building inspector. That's why we have a third party review. It's because he requires it. He requires three sets of eyes.
Okay, but
I'll check and see if he's okay with it. the way-
With Ensign, he's
Yeah,
okay with
yeah.
it inside with just the two sets,
But
okay,
the future ones where the three or where Rasmussen's involved, we should get a third.
got it,
So
I
like
understand.
Rosenberg or somebody to review.
Or I was gonna say Sunrise or something,
Right.
okay, okay.
All right, yeah.
All right, so I just wanted you guys to know, to understand that we need to get somebody, but if you're gonna call Lance, find out from Lance, then maybe by the time you and I meet Thursday afternoon, you might have an answer on that too. Okay. All right, so I had workforce housing zone on here for us to talk a little bit, but I think I would rather I worked on this, penalty section. Here's what I came up with, there's one for you. One for you. One for each of you, Paul, you can look at it later. But what I did, I went to several towns and looked at their section. This is the penalty section, and I have to tell you, every single town I looked at, their general penalty section is exactly the same number, which is Title I, Chapter 4. Title I is administration, Chapter 4 is general penalty. Every one of them has the same numbering system. Every one of them has almost identical language, to the point that I'm like, there must be a template that everybody's following for this section of their code. Because the words, I laid them out and I said, okay, here's this town, here's this town, here's this town. And I went down, I'm like, it's the same words. They're using the same words. All
One of them was probably the first.
one was probably the first one they've all copied. So I copied, honestly, I just copied one of the towns. And this was theirs, and I changed things to make it apply to Virgin. And changed some words here and there, because they talk about different sections of the code. Their town had different code numbers from us. And they called it different things, and so I fixed things to apply to Virgin. And then I sent this off to James Weeks this afternoon about 4 o'clock. And asked him to look at it, told him everything I just told you guys. And the one thing that is different from this that I've given everybody is the town of Hurricane has in their code, I want to show you this. They have these pages in there. They have pages and pages that is a chart that lists the code section, what the violation is, if it's a class A or B, what the recommended is, what the recommended fee would be, and they got pages and pages of this. They're the only one who did that. Nobody else had this big, long chart that's like 6 or 7 pages long with what all the different infraction, whether it's an
It's almost
infraction
like
or.
a bond schedule.
Yes, and so, because it says bail/fee schedule
Yeah.
is what they call
Yeah,
it
that's
there.
a lot of communities.
And so they're the only ones, and all the other towns I looked at, were pretty much this that I just gave you all. So this is a start. And so, I sent this off, like I said, I sent this off to James Weeks and asked him to let me know, what his, opinion is, any changes he would make, any objections. But, you could see all of this refers to, Utah code. And I went and read the different code sections to see, and somebody did a very good job of coming up with a section for penalties that meets all the state codes. Whoever did this did a good job, and so towns have been,
Can you send me that electronically?
I can,
Posted in SharePoint? I can pull it up.
it's on SharePoint,
Is
yeah,
it,
it's already on SharePoint, I put it
is
there,
it Word or is it?
it's in Word, I put it in Word on
Then I'll
purpose.
just pull it on SharePoint. then.
Is it in Word, Crystal? I'm almost positive I put it in Word. No, I know I did. I know I did, because I had to make changes to this to make it apply to virgins.
Just glancing at it, it looks like there's some, I'll have to read it. Only thing I really like in enforcement is not all provisions of enforcement should be criminal.
Right,
You don't want to make a lot of people criminals when it's I like civil
right,
fines and civil violations.
right.
So
And,
it
and,
appears to have that, and I do support.
and one thing it does too, is it had it broken down to, here is if you're violating land use provisions. And if you're violating anything else. That's not a land use provision. So they even have that and it divided out.
Here's what I like most about it.
But
Now,
You
when
can-
Crystal sends a letter
You
to
can-
somebody, well, no, it doesn't give me any more power, any less power. If I can't enforce something because the law is prohibited, but it does allow Crystal, when she writes somebody to say, you're operating, we believe you're operating short-term rental, you should know, if convicted, you will be paying $1,000 a day. And that's, instead of just saying, you're not supposed to do this, now we have a dollar amount behind it. And then if there's some way, at some point, the legislature makes it was enforceable, yeah, but the other stuff too, I really like.
so the other thing too, that's one thing that's in here is an appeal procedure. This is on page 6. If you go to page 6,
And I assume that's for civil.
yeah.
I see it on 4 as well.
Oh, you know what? I believe it's the same appeal procedure. Oh, yes, they had it divided between land use violations and everything else. And so it's being repeated under the heading land use procedures and then everything else. The appeal procedure is the same. But I went and looked at another town when I was looking at their code, because this says under appeal procedure that there has to be appointed a civil hearing officer.
Which I think is James Weeks, the way I believe.
Well, and I wasn't sure. I need to find out because one town just said the mayor would appoint and it would be voted on by town council who would be this civil hearing officer. And I thought, well, shouldn't it just be James Weeks? I don't know. So I think we'll ask Keith what that is.
That's what probably what it was.
Yeah, I was looking at, like for noise violations, that's something the town can write a ticket for, but a police officer can, so that's that representative. I think this is the same thing.
So-
You're an officer, you're,
Are you still on page 4?
I'm on which page you want me to be on there.
Well,
I
okay,
was down to 6 when you said that.
Okay,
Well,
Let me
I'll tell
see.
you what, James Weeks, or sorry, the officer can write a ticket, but once they take it to court and find it, our prosecuting attorney can't do anything about it because he can't fight anything.
what?
No, I'm saying, yeah, you can, James Weeks can fight for us.
Why can't he find it?
Like if somebody bites, if a dog bites somebody, you can't fight it.
If a
There's no,
citation-
there's no police use or anything.
Right, that's what.
Crystal, that's what this is. That's what this is.
Right now, you can't.
But we're talking about once this is in place. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, this
So-
is in power to be able to, because
Because
before
he
it
can
was,
become
yeah.
that
you could
peace
do
officer,
this.
she become the peace officer that. you
So-
talked about.
So on page 4
You
and
can.
on page 4 and page 5, both. Page 4, if you look at C up at the top, on page 4. Referral to Washington County Sheriff. the other towns all had police departments, so they were referring to the chief of police, and I changed those to say Washington County Sheriff.
Can I just say something for Misty's education?
Uh-huh.
There's two ways that we can prosecute. So let's say dogs on the loose. You can call the sheriff and have them come up and cite the individual, or you can also, this is what we did with Rebecca before, when we were dealing with certain individuals in town. Was she can submit, we give her all of the information and she sends a summons.
I agree.
Those are the two ways that we can go about doing it.
I was agreeing with you. I didn't
I
disagree.
wasn't sure if you knew that, I was just saying.
No, I was 100% agreeing with you. That's what I said.
Oh, I
I
didn't-
said, so we can.
Yeah, there's two ways we can approach it. You
Right.
can use your peace officer
There
or you
was-
can use
no, I was-
your civil hearing officer.
No, I agree with you.
No, civil hearing officer is different than prosecuting attorney. So James Weeks, and Rebecca, they were our prosecuting attorney.
Yes,
So we send them the information, they look to see if there's probable cause. And if they could prosecute it, then they create a complaint or a summons to do it. A hearing officer is like a judge. And so if you have a civil fine, that hearing officer is gonna come in and look at everything and kind of act as a judge as to whether they should impose that.
So this-
Or not on the individual.
so this is just like where we have an appeal authority for the appeal.
Yeah,
to
kind of like
find
the
somebody
appeal-
that we
it's
would
kind of like
appoint.
the appeal authority, yes.
So we would ask Heath. Who would you recommend?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would for sure want somebody out of town,
okay.
just like we have with Bruce Jenkins. That way there's never bias.
Oh, for sure. I don't even know if there's anybody that lives in
I
town.
just get nervous when I see positions have a massive amount of power and no checks.
Oh, no, this, what would happen is, I believe we could have, just like we have the code that about the appeal authority and what the appeal authority does.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that we would have, because like I said, some of these other towns, I look to see what did they do for this civil hearing officer, and they have a whole section of what they're looking for in their qualifications and this and that and the other, and what they can do and how they can do it. And so we would have to probably have another ordinance that addresses that.
Why don't we contact other towns, figure out who their hearing officers are, and maybe we can,
Okay,
use one of them and.
Okay.
um,
I didn't think of that. Okay, all right. I like that idea.
I'm gonna read this.
So, this will be, I'll put this on the agenda for our meeting next week, for us to continue talking about this. Because hopefully by then we've got something back, and then I'll send a copy over to Heath also and say, Yeah. yeah,
That's great.
here's my rough
If we get
draft.
something back from Meeks,
Oh, yes,
can you send us a copy before the meeting?
yeah,
For us to review?
yeah, yes, because I sent the email to James Weeks at about 4 o'clock, and I almost CC'd you, because you and I have talked about this before. So I almost CC'd you, and then I said, well, I'm about to talk about it in 2 hours, so.
It's great.
And if we don't get anything, we can always delay it a month.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, it's been this long.
I mean, it's gone for what, 20 years.
Yeah, so what's another month or two?
This is really good.
When I saw this and I started looking at all the other towns, I went, oh, this is, if I'd known this was gonna be this easy, I'd have done it a year ago. I didn't know it's gonna be this easy. So, anyway, anything else from anybody before we adjourn?
I wanted to follow up on when we talked about in the last work meeting about properties that are people that have built in properties and Virgin's accesses, where are we?
We have tomorrow, as a matter of fact. Bush and Gudgel is coming to survey all the locations, because I want them surveyed, and I want those markers with the those rebar, this stuff driven into the ground, the little yellow cap on it. I don't want just a wooden stake stuck in the ground with a little flag on it and say, here's their property lines. I want the permanent markers. And then we know exactly where our property, the town's property is. And then we can talk again about this property and that property, about, well, I guess all three properties, about are we, the town, going to put a gate that we control? Are we gonna leave it wide open? What are we gonna do? But at least at this point, we've got it marked. And then once, so
Are you gonna talk with Dean about this? I'm super confused on this, and here's why,
about what?
about the gate thing.
Yeah, we can talk, we can
We
talk.
wanted to put a gate down here, and we were specifically told by him, the only way we could block a public street is if we abandon use. But now I'm hearing, and when I talked the other day, or when I talked to you guys the other day, somebody's been saying, Heath is saying, no, you can, no, after I heard him say it, you can block off, you can gate the public access like that. So I just want to understand why
Well, we
we
can
had to
ask-
abandon this use versus just gating it off.
We can talk to them then at the meeting next week.
We should find that out.
At the meeting next week, I'm gonna do a closed meeting afterwards. I sent all of you the thing that came from Sitla with the lease for the Mesa water tank. Okay.
Has Steve talked to us?
I sent it on to Heath. I've heard nothing from him, but I want us to talk about that in the closed meeting.
Yeah.
And then, the other thing was the negotiation. Oh, so the Water Conservancy District, Heath and I talked after that meeting we had with, Zach. And remember, Paul, you had asked, gee, I thought our whole point was to try to get into the water pooling agreement before the new revised water pooling agreement is done. And I talked to Heath, I said, what do you think he was saying to us in this meeting? He said, I think he's saying that, we're not going that route now. We're going this other route. I said, that's what I thought. That we are not pursuing trying to get in before the new revised water pooling agreement. We need to get them to amend the revised water pooling agreement so that we can get in. And that is what I came away with for the meeting with Zach, and I conferred with Heath, and he came away with the exact same understanding. Because Heath was saying, I will not bring it, what Zach said is, I'm bringing nothing to the board for the vote on if I don't know how they're gonna vote on it.
Yeah, he's got what, 3 towns that object to us joining, as I said.
Yeah. And so Heath and I talked about how to proceed on that. And I don't want to talk about that in an open meeting. That will also be in the closed meeting. So I want you guys to know we'll have a closed meeting next week for those two, Water Conservancy District and Mesa Water.
About employees. Employees.
If there's anything to talk about. I have no clue.
We need to ask him if he's anything's happening.
Yes, we do, right, I agree. So we'll talk to him next week about your questions about the gate.
Yeah,
And are we gonna,
So as soon as we have the markers over here,
we're gonna make them follow through the ones that are happening, we're gonna make them follow through with removing gates and rebuilding fences. Or removing fences.
yes, that's what we're all, that's, once we've got these marked and we have those markers in place and we know exactly where the town property is, then we're gonna say, okay, what are we gonna do about this? But Jimmy, at least, once those markers are in the ground, we can start moving that fence,
Yeah.
because I wanted it marked.
I think there's
Okay.
problems in
Before we
all- I
moved
think
it.
there's problems in all 3 areas, that's why I was.
That's good.
So what?
There's problems in all 3
3
areas.
areas, and that's why, and I also asked, and I can't remember, Crystal, if you did this when you told, if you ever called Bush and Gudgel back and tell them I want them also to do that road.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So there's 4 places they're gonna,
Have you looked at what the Tubers have done,
uh,
as far as cleaning up that road and access to the river?
no, I saw it right before they started, but I have not gone down there and looked since.
Yeah.
Is it,
That's been really improved.
okay, I'll look at it. Maybe when I leave here, I'll go around there.
Well, before you go, I'll have you do this.
Oh, okay, that's right, that's right.
Do you need a motion real quick?
Yes, please.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We got the year-end financial.
We did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, not the audited one, but we got as of the end of June, which is a year-end
We got that from Sil.
from sale.
Okay.
And we show a $360,000.
I have it.
Circles?
Let's start.
We have a second.